Hello guys and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Haley and I do reviews of Christian fiction, classics, nonfiction, just really whatever I feel like reading, and I give you my honest opinion. I try to rate them from the point of view of a biblical counselor, a Christian, and I am pretty critical on the quality of the writing as well because I grew up reading classics. So my most frequent video series that I actually remember to do is what did I read last month. So this is going to be the April video. I can't believe it's already May. It does not feel like that much of the year has already passed, but here we are in the 5th month already. So in April I read 9 books and that was 2,803 pages. So that's around my average. I'm doing pretty well. I'm a couple books behind on my reading challenge, but I'm not really worried about that because usually by the end of the year I knock it out. The first books that I read this month was actually a trilogy that I read, the Page Alder trilogy by Aaron Mangum, and I've had these on my list for a long time. Lindsay from Books for Christian Girls talked about them and gave them 5 stars and shared some quotes from them, and they sounded really intriguing to me. So when I got a Kindle for my birthday, I checked these out immediately. They were available through my library, and I just had a lot of fun reading these. I don't remember specifically like each separate book what was different about them, but I gave, I think 2 of them 5 stars, and I think the middle one I gave 4 stars. But basically, it's the story of Paige, who is a 22-year-old Christian who's just kind of trying to balance work and life and serving in the church a ton and family stuff. And so I definitely related to her because she's the same age as me and just has a lot of the same interest as me. So that was the first book I think was really trying to like figure out her schedule and everything. And the second book I think dealt with like forgiveness, and I don't remember what the third book was about. But I really appreciated that there was no like editing mistakes in here, that it was a very linear storyline. There wasn't jumping back and forth between times. The characters were super relatable, and I felt like real. A lot of the characters in books I've been reading lately just seem very surface level. I feel like I really got to know Paige and Tyler and all the other characters in here. I definitely related just to Paige in like her busyness in that season of life and trying to just figure out how to balance everything out, and then we had a relationship on top of that. She was really stressed out. I really liked Tyler, and their relationship I thought was really cool. And even though like I don't go to a church that's as big as Paige did, and I thought some of the things were funny just in the like culture of being in a huge church like that, I loved just all the church aspects and how often she was there, and just the scenes with her surrounded by church people I thought was really neat. So the only thing that huge problem I had with this book series is that she literally stopped at Starbucks for a caramel macchiato like twice a day. Like, I think I gained weight just reading these books and reading about how many times she went to Starbucks. So that was quite disturbing to me. Other than that, if you want like kind of a fluffy, modern Christian book, I thought that these books were really fun and enjoyable, and I would even consider maybe going back in a couple years and rereading them just because they were so fun. Then the second, or well, I guess that was 3 books. So then the fourth book that I read was The Lost Year by Catherine Marsh. I saw Busy Moms read too, Maggie. She read this over on Instagram. She has a website also, and she really enjoyed it. I ended up giving it 3 stars. It's about, well, it's dual timeline, so it's about the Holodomor in Ukraine, where a bunch of people were starving post-World War I, and then it's also a young boy in 2020 during COVID figuring out his family's history. So the family aspects were cool, and him getting to know his great-grandmother, I really enjoyed that. However, it starts out like, okay, it's 2020, COVID, and also I'm obsessed with video games. He does get the video games taken away, but it was just difficult for me because I just don't agree with that worldview of like COVID's so scary and the video games, and just the place that the author was writing from just didn't align with my worldview that much. But I thought some of the history parts were neat, and I didn't think it was that surprising. Even though I hadn't heard of the Holodomor, I wasn't like super shocked that I hadn't heard about it, because I'm just used to learning all these things about history that I'd never heard about before, and I've learned enough about the Soviet Union to know that there's a lot of things we don't know about the Soviet Union because of who they are. But yeah, there wasn't really anything special to this book, and if you're just so interested in Ukraine and the Soviet Union, maybe you would want to read this, but I feel like you could just go read something else that would probably give you the same history. There wasn't really anything particularly special to it. Then I finished Remade by Paul Tauchis. I ended up giving this 5 stars. This was one that I worked on for a long time. I worked through it in a counseling case, and if you've watched my other videos, I think I mentioned that Dr. Tauchis was my supervisor for the ACBC counseling certification. So I know him, and I enjoyed reading this book that he wrote last year. It's a 90-day devotional, and he goes through the first third of the book is on how you're a saint, how you're saved, you're loved by the Trinity, all the blessings of being saved. And then you have the section on being a sinner and how you still have to be sanctified and you have to be fighting your sin. And then the last section was on being a sufferer and how you can suffer well and having discernment and anchoring your faith. So I think this is just a really good devotional for anyone to go through, really, but particularly if you're really struggling with your identity in Christ, with just being content with the different things that are going on, or if you are struggling with being a sufferer. I think this is a really useful book, and he asks really good questions that are convicting and I think really helpful. So if you're looking for a devotional to go through, this is one I would definitely recommend. And then I listened to The Mysterious Case of Rudolph Diesel, Genius, Power, and Deception on the Eve of World War I. This is by Douglas Brunt, and I gave this 5 stars. If you are over on Instagram, I love this book so much. Now, if I read this like in a physical copy, I might have loved it a little bit less. But listening to it, one, it was narrated by Scott Brick, who is my mom's favorite audiobook narrator, and I didn't know particularly who he was, but he was just such a good narrator. And this is in the genre category of books of like historical things that are really important or fascinating, but for some reason no one really knows about them, and you just feel really smart after reading it. And this book fits perfectly in there. So basically, the gist of it starts out saying, did you even know that the word diesel is actually supposed to be capitalized because it's actually named after a person? Like, we would never not capitalize Ford or Chrysler or all these other companies that are named after a person's name, and Diesel is the same way, but everyone has forgotten who Diesel even was. So I found every bit of it super fascinating, from just the science behind the diesel engine. I was looking up videos of how it actually works and how it's different from an auto engine. The book also talks about auto and how he was coming up with stuff at the same time. Also the Diesel's influence on World War I and how he knew a lot of he was from Germany, so he knew a lot of the German leaders and just what was going on there. The beginnings of Anheuser-Busch, that was really fascinating to learn about. And I think Anheuser, he was the youngest of 21 children, I think. Or no, he was 21st out of 22. And so I thought that was super fascinating, and how he ended up marrying into the Bush family. I think I'm getting that right, but I'm probably mixing up their names. And just how they got the diesel engine and helped to make it better. And then the Nobel Prize, and learning about Nobel and why he even left money to be given as a prize, even though he was actually the inventor of dynamite, TNT, I think. Learning about that. So it was just really cool to see all the different connections with Diesel, and I feel like I could go back and read it even a couple weeks later and learn so much more that I didn't catch the first time. And then in the end, Diesel disappears. One of the richest, most influential men in the world just is gone without a trace, and then a few months later his wife mysteriously disappears as well. I think that Douglas Brunt is giving a new theory about where Rudolph Diesel went, but I agree with his theory. I think it was really cool. And maybe if you were reading the physical copy, you would be a little bit bored, but I just really, really love this, especially if you're into history. I would highly recommend. That was a really good book. But then the next one was Hey Jude Carpenter by Storm Schultz. I only ended up giving this 2 stars. So I've known of Storm Schultz, followed her for a while. I think her other book I've heard really good things about. So I was excited to read this. Personally, I really liked the cover. I had some credits on Kindle, so I went ahead and got this book. I was very disappointed. First of all, I will say the writing is really good, and I appreciated that it was well written. I feel like I always have to say that because I am so critical of writing and of editing. This was well done as far as a technical, from a technical point of view. I thought it was really well done. However, as far as the content and the storyline goes, there were just so many things that I personally disagreed with that I just cannot recommend this book to anyone. So the first big issue I have with it is that I can't condone teenage relationships whatsoever. I mean, what is the point of dating if you have no hope of marriage anytime soon? Now, if you're 17 and that, that timeline would line up, that's cool. But being 14, it makes no sense. Why would you even have thoughts like that? You're only a child once. Just like enjoy your childhood and stop thinking about dating. And I feel like I have a lot of personal experience. I have a lot of siblings, and my siblings have a lot of friends that I'm constantly observing this, and constantly encouraging them to just be friends and not think about relationships. So reading this book was just like totally outside of that comfort zone that I'm in, and it just felt really weird. And then there was kissing in there, and then Silas, the older brother, is totally rebellious, and he's in this relationship, and he's only 16, and his parents are just like, oh, we kind of don't like that, but they don't really say anything about it, and they don't really parent him, and it's kind of seen as like a bad thing, and he turns around later, but I don't know, it just wasn't like, wow, this is something that we are not going to do, and you just need to wait till you're older. It just felt really weird. And then another thing that really bothered me was that there was a lot of descriptions of church and a church split, and the conversations with a pastor, that being a pastor's kid and being in the church were very unrealistic to what I'm used to. And you know how, like, if someone gets something wrong about, like, the president, you're like, oh, that's kind of annoying, you got that wrong, but whatever, it's not personal. But if someone gets something wrong about, like, whatever your passion is, you know, if you're passionate about music and someone just says something super dumb about music, you're like, that feels kind of personal. And I feel that way because I'm a pastor's kid and I'm super involved in the church. And then if someone's like is talking about church stuff and it just isn't quite right, it really bothers me. So anyways, I would not recommend this. Just, I know that a lot of the other Christian YouTubers disagree with my opinion on this, but I just don't like teen relationships at all because I don't see any point in them, and I'm constantly, I feel like, having to deal with that in real life, and then so to read it in a book and see it condoned like that, I just found super odd and did not like this book. Moving on to a better book that I really enjoyed because it's a classic, written in 1897, The Treasure of the Secret Cove by Amy Lefebvre. This book, I think, was a shock to me because Lamplighters, I love a lot of Lamplighters. Like, I know they're going to be pretty good. But it started out and it was kind of like, where is this going? It's basically, there is this young girl whose there's a young girl who is being taken care of by her uncle, I think, and her uncle's dying. So her uncle goes and finds his young friend that he has, brings him to the place where the main character is. Una, I think is her name. And he says, basically, you need to marry her because her father is not a great guy, and as soon as I die, she's going to get my fortune, and her father's probably going to try to come and steal it. So I need you to marry her just to protect her, basically. So they don't love each other at all. Like, they go on their honeymoon to London, and they're just like, this is really boring. Like, I don't really know you. I don't even know what to talk about. Like, why are we even on this trip? And then they go back home. He goes into his, like, selfish pursuit of writing his book, and she continues her pursuit of fishing and working on her boat and all this stuff. And so they don't love each other. They keep secrets from each other, and they slowly, throughout the book, begin to fall in love. And they also realize that they need, both of them separately, realize that they need to get into the lifeboat, into Christ, and be saved, that there's something missing in their life that their friends have. And so they have separate journeys that they are learning to deny themselves and learning to submit to Christ. And by the end of it, it's just so beautiful. I think I was definitely tearing up at the end. And there's just things that make you really annoyed. Like, as this was a family read out, so as we're reading it as a family, we're all like yelling at the book, like, no, why did you do that? What is wrong with you? Like, you need counseling, like, get help. But then at the end, it just like so perfectly wraps everything up. And there's so much redemption in it and just a sweet love story by the end. And I definitely think that, like, give this a chance. If you're going to read it, just keep reading, stick with it, and it's so worth it by the end, and such a sweet story that you'll remember and learn a lot of things from. And then the last book that I read was When the Ice Melts by Ashlyn Michaela Ohm. So this book was actually sent to me for free in exchange for a review years ago, but I didn't have a Kindle, so I never read it. So since I have a Kindle now, I went ahead and added it, and was looking for something to read because I'm reading a Charles Williams book on my Kindle and not enjoying it at all. So I went to this to be distracted. And from the beginning, I didn't super love it. It wasn't really great, but I just kept reading, and just because there was like a couple of parts that I was invested in. I think I actually did tear up at the end because there was like sisters being reunited. The love story was frankly disappointing because nothing really came of it in the end. It was kind of like, oh, someday we'll do something about this. And okay, You know how in Silas Marner, like, he loses everything, and then by the end of the book, he doesn't get any of that stuff back, even though it was unjustly taken from him, but he finds something better, and most people reading it are like, yeah, he found something so much better, but I feel like the injustice in my soul, like, no, he needs to get his thing back that someone stole from him. And that's how I felt in this book. Like, she has to give up her dream of being an Olympian so that she can get away from everything that goes with that and the people associated with that. And it just really annoys me because she's so good and she could have still gone to the Olympics a different way and just gotten rid of all of those people and all of those wrong attitudes and done it in a right manner, but instead she just like completely leaves and restarts her life. Like, whatever, if that's what she needed to do, but it just bothers me as a reader. My biggest problem with this book was definitely just the way it was written, though, and there was a lot of telling, not showing, and a lot of like chapters of just people's thoughts and how this man was dealing with the death of his parents and this big thing that happened that we're not allowed to know about until the end of the book. And so that just bothered me. And then the theology in it, like the main character's sister supposedly has this like prophetic gift where she can like see into people's souls and kind of have a bad feeling about what's going to happen, and I just super don't agree with that theology, so it really bothered me, and I would not recommend this book because I don't think there was anything like good about it, because and even the good parts were around the same level as a lot of other Christian fiction books that would be better and more worth your time, so not one that I would recommend. So anyways, there's the 9 books that I read in the month of April. I hope that you guys got some good recommendations. I think you can definitely tell what my favorite books were from the month. Obviously, The Treasure of the Secret Cove and The Mysterious Case of Rudolph Diesel were really great books, and I had some other good ones and some letdowns. But I've really been enjoying reading from my Kindle and reading some more Christian fiction books. I really need to finish some classics that I'm in the middle of, like Anne of Green Gables. If you guys enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Maybe comment down below, tell me what you are reading. And as always, if you want any of these books that I talked about, I will leave the links down in the description below. And those are affiliate links that does help to support my channel. So thank you guys for being here, and I will see you next week. Bye!